Welcome back to The Rundown. Israeli ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, is reiterating Israel's stance on the ongoing nuclear accord negotiations, lambasting Tehran's demand that the IAEA investigation into its activities at several sites be closed. He spoke to our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim, about a range of current threats. Let's take a listen.
Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. The original JCPOA, the Iranian nuclear accord, was implemented through a United Nations Security Council resolution. And within that resolution, world powers were given the opportunity to implement snapback sanctions, which means if Iran violated the deal, a member of the Security Council could start the process of re-implementing sanctions on Iran. What is the potential, number one, for the full snapback sanctions to be included in a possible renewed nuclear accord? And number two, do you think the United States or an ally would have the willpower to implement snapback sanctions if they see Iran is violating a renewed nuclear accord?
As we said many times, the only formula that can stop Iran from continuing its advancement towards becoming a nuclear power is a combination. Okay, it's a combination of diplomatic isolation, crippling sanctions that will be imposed on Iran, and because we're dealing with a ruthless regime that doesn't even care if its own people, they don't have water, like in Isfahan, they use all the money, all the dividends that they got from the sanctions relief only to strengthen their terrorist proxies. So we need a credible military threat to present the Iranian regime with a credible military threat that would force them to decide between their own survival as a regime and their crazy, dangerous nuclear ambitions. So if a deal is reached and is signed, again, as I told you, Israel is not going to be bound by any international deal that is jeopardizing our future. So we will have to do whatever we'll have to do. We will continue to build our military capabilities in order to defend our future. But as I explained, if a deal isn't signed, so definitely the snapback mechanism that will impose international sanctions on Iran, not like today that we have only American sanctions on Iran, is a crucial component of the formula to stop Iran. So if a deal is not signed, we will campaign here to relaunch, re-trigger the snapback mechanism. There was one effort during the Trump administration that have failed. But now if one of the signatories, if they all understand that Iran is continuing to simultaneously drag its feet, negotiating, but still continuing to advance its nuclear capabilities and continuing with the violations of all of their nuclear commitments, so definitely we hope and we would like to see the triggering of the snapback mechanism against Iran. If a deal is signed, it's still important, of course, that it will include a snapback mechanism, but we don't have too many hopes, because we believe that if a deal is signed, so Iran has all the incentives to comply with the deal. They only need to wait, because automatically that's the main problem of this deal. If it's signed, after 2 to 7 years, Iran, it will be legitimate for Iran to advance its nuclear capabilities, and its breakout time to a bomb will be shrunk to almost zero. So why would they violate such a great deal for them? So we are not very hopeful regarding the snapback mechanism if a deal is signed.
When the Biden White House took office, they mentioned nonstop, we want a longer and stronger deal with Iran, encompassing terrorism, encompassing ballistic missiles, encompassing everything outside of the nuclear accord. That message of longer and stronger slowly but surely dissipated from the language they have been using, and it's obvious at this point that it's not going to happen. So how do you replace Israel and your allies? How do you replace what would have been encompassed in a longer and stronger deal through other actions at this point?
That's another reason why we oppose the reviving of the old deal. And that's the only thing that we have right now on the table. When I served as Israel's ambassador in Washington, we were promised that they will reach a longer and stronger deal. What does it mean? We have to deeply understand. It means that even the current administration, the American administration, understands that the JCPOA does not address the threats that Iran poses. That's what they said. We need a longer, stronger deal because the current deal is not sufficient. When we asked them, how are you going to reach a longer, stronger deal? So the understanding was that by rejoining the deal, they will have the ability to unite the international community to put pressure on Iran to negotiate a longer and stronger deal. Right now, it doesn't seem realistic that Russia or China would help to put pressure on Iran. Once Iran will be allowed to be back on the track of the JCPOA, and in 7 years it will be legitimate for them to acquire almost all the nuclear capabilities needed to break out to a bomb, why would Iran agree to negotiate a deal that is worse for them? That is why we're so deeply concerned.
Israeli Ambassador to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having me, Mike.